and welcome to the Metaverse Insiders interview series. My name is Josh, and in today's episode, we cover part 2 of our conversation with Lyron Bentovim, President and CEO of the Glimpse Group, an immersive technology company comprised of a diverse ecosystem of subsidiaries providing enterprise-focused AR and VR software and services. So, Lyron, to resume our conversation, would you say that the Glimpse Group is coming almost from a perspective of transitioning or helping companies move into this new space? Because as you said, B2B is the way forward in this instance. I don't quite think that we're at the point where B2C is quite possible. I mean, we still may be doing it, but not to the level we should be, because the foundations for the metaverse still haven't quite been set. And this is obviously very important. And I can see that you are building an ecosystem for which this can be enabled, and that's very interesting. I personally believe that there are two things that are important for the onset of a metaverse, and that is high-performance cloud computing and blockchain technology. Is the Glimpse Group involved in these two factors at all?
Yes. So we are basically we see I see the same way you do, because those are the elements that will allow that. And what we're doing is we're partnering with a lot of people that bring those technologies to bear, and really thinking about how this is all going to be. So we're working, for example, with NVIDIA to take kind of their technology and the kind of which is leading edge, and I think they're going to drive kind of this a lot of this metaverse evolution and integrating our VR solutions into what they're doing as partners. I'm actually flying to Orlando tomorrow to ITSEC to basically where we're going to showcase that exact thing in front of that kind of crowd. It's just like it's mind blowing what the elements that are happening there, and then working with kind of the telecom providers that are going to basically give us the 5G and eventually 6G that will drive kind of basically all this, because it's not in a silo. Nobody's building. I hate it. One of the things I hate the most when people say, "I'm building a metaverse." No, you're not. Nobody's building a metaverse. You might be building a world, or you're building a presence for your company on some site. You're definitely not building a metaverse. I've seen so many people think, "Oh, we're building a metaverse." It's like, that's great. Who's in your metaverse? Oh, no, we're just building the capability. And it's like, no, you're just building a potential world, or allowing people to build some worlds within your worlds. But this is far from the metaverse. So the metaverse is about the layers of technology that is needed to get to the point where all this is working. And then blockchain, people don't really get it. And blockchain obviously has gotten a lot of bad vibes with all of the the things that are going on around basically both the cryptocurrencies and the NFTs. But in reality, when you look at where we are with those things will be real. So if you look at what blockchain is going to allow us to do in the metaverse, is basically three critical things. One is verify identification. Who are we? So how do I know you're you? Right now, if I've met you now and we've done this kind of interview and I talk to you next week, you will look like you. I would be very shocked if someone faked someone and hired someone that basically looked like you to try and basically get me to follow up some questions. So, but in the real world, you have no idea who's who. I don't all my employees are there. Nobody's going to fake look like my employee and show up, and I'll probably call that pretty quickly if someone actually looked almost like one of my employees showing up my office. But if my office is virtually, which I believe we will have virtual offices relatively in short order, if I had to guess, because they have the benefits of the remote work with the benefits of working from home, basically on one side, and then you've got the social elements of being together in an office. So you'll have virtual offices. You'll put your headset on. You'll be in a virtual room. You can walk around. You can talk to your peers. You'll have that same culture of hang out in the office. It will be way cheaper because you won't have to pay the rent. You'll have more flexibility in what you can do in your office. You can have a swimming pool in your office, with waves and sharks, and people can just go hang out there and do whatever, because you're not limited, but you still do it remotely, so you don't have to commute in or limited to people that live around certain offices. So, but how do I know my employees are who they are? Or if you're coming to visit me in my office, how do I know you are who you are? Blockchain technology will allow you to control that information, share it with whoever it needs. So I would say anyone coming to my office has to basically, their identity has to be visible to all the people in the office, or visible just to me as the kind of the CEO, and I can see that everybody is who they are, that's in the office. But when you're going to a club in the metaverse, then you can keep your identity secret if that's the case. But if you find someone that you want to kind of build a relationship with, you might share some information with them based on what you both want to do. And the metaverse and the blockchain will allow you to do that. Then NFTs are as critical, if not more, because I believe all the assets in the metaverse will be NFTs. Not that they will go up and down in speculative value. Most of them will be very stable in terms of value, but just like real assets in real life. But if I go to a virtual bar, my wine glass will be a NFT, meaning there's some things that happen in that bar. First of all, how it looks, who owns it, what happens to it. So kind of, if I take the glass and drop it on the floor, does it break or not? Some worlds will say in our bar it breaks. In some worlds you drop it off and it just disappears. Kind of, you can do anything you want, and you can make the same glass have different properties in different places, and all of that will be managed basically using blockchain technology as an NFT. And then kind of what happens when you drink wine. So a little bit of the wine in the glass goes in. The wine itself will be an NFT. Initially, kind of just the way it looks, but eventually kind of the way it tastes, as we go back to what we talked about earlier. So NFT will manage all of that, and obviously currencies, kind of whether it's going to be Bitcoin or any other currency, who knows? But there will be a currency that will allow everybody to buy anything anywhere and also pay for services, because I see the metaverse as a place where a lot of people around the world are going to be working in there. So let's say I build a kind of a world that basically looks like ancient Greece, and kind of I build a world now. I'm going to have a bunch of AIs, and that's where AI will come in. That will be running around there, but the world will be really complex and kind of, and you'll need to know what's going on. Just like you have real tour guides in the real place that all have to be physically where you're actually touring, the virtual tour guide of virtual Greece could be anywhere in the world. And it could be an AI, but some people would actually appreciate a person that can actually show them all the cool spots and tell them kind of all the tricks and take them around and be their guide. And that guy might be living in Mongolia. And that person, that's the day job, and they show up for X hours and do what they do. And that's their job. Or they could be a barman in a virtual bar if I wanted to have a real human versus an AI barman. And that'll be their job, and they don't need to live near the bar and basically kind of do that. They can virtually show up and do the exact same things as kind of managing that virtual bar. So kind of for all of that, we need a currency that will be able to be global so everybody gets it, and then people can either kind of use that in the real world, as they kind of need to use that money to basically pay the rent and kind of and buy food, or convert it into local currencies if they need to. But I believe that over time the local currencies will become obsolete, and there will be kind of multiple kind of virtual currencies that all kind of be acceptable in places. And obviously there will be some currencies that will be very minimalistic and kind of not be easily exchanged, just like kind of if you look at kind of currencies of many countries that you would never touch because you have nothing to do with them. They're good in their countries, and they're good maybe in a couple of surrounded countries that kind of have an easy exchange thing, but then you move away from them if you're kind of looking at a kind of currency of Lesotho and you go to Portugal, that nobody will want to touch that. But in South Africa, people might say, you know what, yeah, I'll give you kind of an exchange rate and do that. And there'll be some currencies like the dollar that anywhere in the world you can take a dollar and people will take it from you and give you services for it. So that's how I see the kind of the currency element, the cryptocurrencies coming into play there. So what we're seeing right now is a lot of small things that eventually will evolve into all those elements that will make the metaverse what the metaverse is.
Oh, absolutely. There's so many factors that are currently working together to make this a reality, and it's very exciting to see where it's all going. And as we see with currency as it is today, we've seen the transition from coins to notes and then notes to electronic money. And as you said, believe that eventually will become obsolete. And I do agree with you. But regarding this, what is your take on decentralization? Because this is a major factor within this whole industry, and what it means to people varies quite a lot.
Yeah, no, interesting. So kind of decentralization for me is a good phenomenon, and kind of basically I think the blockchain technology will allow us to own our information because it will be tied to us, kind of. But you're not going to take away the ability ability of worlds to collect information on what's happening in their world, which kind of you will only be the person owning your information. So the difference right now is we are our essence of our kind of basically kind of collective knowledge is geared in a variety of different places by certain organizations that kind of were using a lot of their services for free. Google is an example, or Apple, or Microsoft, or Facebook. And in return, kind of they're basically offering us a lot of free services. And in return, they basically collect information. Uh, that would happen in the same way in certain worlds. But again, the information will be restricted. As I look at those worlds, some of these worlds will be decentralized, meaning they're not owned by anyone, they'll be owned by a collective. It's just like kind of, I look at it as the way you look at a kind of the international map right now. So there are certain countries that are democracies, certain countries are kind of basically kind of monarchies, certain are kind of basically kind of totalitarian, and kind of, and everybody makes their own decision where they want to go based on what they need to, how desperate they are to go there, and what they feel about kind of being in that place, and basically knowing the rules. So I think there'll be general rules that will govern the metaverse. And then each world will have its own set of rules that will be kind of under the rules of the metaverse. Just like there are certain rules about the world that we live in that are overall respected kind of as a whole. For example, that you use a passport to get into a country is a rule, right? Kind of, and your passport is accepted in democracies and totalitarian countries. Kind of, you might not want to get in, and they might abuse you when you come in. But kind of the way to get in, a passport is a passport. You use the same document to get into England as you would to get into Venezuela. Uh, and each world will create its own rules, and you will kind of visit that world if you feel like you want to adhere to those rules. Some of those will be kind of basically kind of decentralized. Some would be worlds that are tied to people that own certain know-how or capabilities. Could be Disney; they will have their own world, and when you enter there, they own that. That's their property. You don't want to go there; you don't have to. And kind of once you go in, they will kind of basically capture what you're doing in there and try and sell you more of their services, which is their business. So some would be kind of potentially owned by organizations and corporations. Some would be democracies where certain members would govern them, and some would be totally decentralized, and kind of nobody's running them, and they'll just kind of morph and kind of probably have new forms of governance in those worlds versus what we have in the real world. And it's an interesting kind of how the real world and the metaverse will actually kind of deal with, because in you can see a world where, because right now some countries can limit what you can do in the digital world. I think it will be almost impossible to limit what you do in the metaverse. They could limit what kind of you can enter it, but then they'll have kind of people that are totally disconnected. But once you're in, you'll be very hard to track and manage what you're doing, because you'll be moving around and not just consuming basically kind of a layer of information on a website. And so I think kind of countries will morph over time based on what's going to happen in the metaverse and the importance of countries, because right now countries govern where you work. And I think if I look 30 years out, I would easily guess that kind of maybe 40-50% of the people in the world will be working in the metaverse and doing a variety of goods and services wherever they are, because kind of we're already kind of moving to the global world, and the metaverse will really get us there, where it doesn't matter where you're basically a citizen of the world, and you can kind of basically do what you want to do in that world.
Yeah, super interesting. I mean, once again, such a mind-boggling concept.
Being in this world and being part of kind of a group of people that is helping build it is very powerful. Kind of you feel kind of excited about kind of what we're building all together as a kind of as an industry and a community.
Oh, definitely, Lyron. It's definitely revolutionary to say the least. So I've got one more question for you. What can we expect from the Glimpse Group in the next half a year to a year or so, or even further than that, next 5 to 10 years? Although I know that may be a difficult question to answer.
So what we're trying to do is to become, and I think we already are kind of right now, but could kind of stay there as the industry grows, the premier software and services company in this industry. So I think, and again, there's no real ranking of it, but we're kind of probably the largest independent software and services company right now in terms of scale, in terms of revenues, people, and kind of the like. And we want to continue to do that by bringing in companies that fit what we're looking at. So we're constantly looking at companies that are best of breed, that want to be part of what we're doing, that want to continue to build their thing. So joining Glimpse is not an exit for those companies. They're basically converting ownership in their company to becoming part of Glimpse. They kind of, when we acquire companies, we acquire them for shares in the parent company. So everybody owns, in a sense, a piece of everybody else's company, and by a piece of the whole. And it's kind of basically being part of a team. And kind of you have your own culture, and each one of our subsidiaries has their own culture, but they're part of the whole. And I really want to be kind of a group that will help set the trends of how this industry is going to become what it's going to become. So kind of we want to continue to grow, kind of both organically and inorganically, add kind of more companies into the mix, and really become kind of a partner for organizations and companies that want to basically go into the metaverse.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for an interesting conversation.
This was a fun conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Well, that's a wrap for part 2 of our conversation with Lyron Bentovim from the Glimpse Group. Be sure to stay tuned for weekly updates in the industry and content covering all things metaverse. Follow the Metaverse Insider on Twitter and LinkedIn, and visit metaverseinsider.tech for all our content. Thank you for joining us, and until next time.